Good morning, Peace Chapel. We're starting a brand new series, new message series today, entitled Preparing to Make a Difference. And I'm excited about this message series for a couple of reasons. Number one, I'm excited because, when I put these message series together, I'm always thinking that for someone the light is going to come on. And it's going to be a game changer, And I believe that this one, when you talk about preparing to make a difference, if the light comes on for somebody in a message series like this, it could really, really do a great thing for them and the people that's around them. The second reason why I'm excited is because I love leadership development. When it comes to things that really make my heart beat in terms of using my gift, it's vision casting and leadership development. I love to develop leaders. I love pouring into leaders because somebody poured into me. And because that made such a difference in my life, it ignited this fire inside of me to want to pour into other people. Somebody took a chance on me. Somebody believed in me when I didn't really believe in myself. And they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And so that's really my mode of ministry. I can see things in people that they can't even see in themselves. People that have in them the potential to make a great difference in their families, a great difference in the community, a great difference in the church. And so I get excited when it comes to messages about leadership development. And I also understand that not everyone is going to see the vision. Everyone is not going to see the vision. And not everyone can be developed under my leadership. What I understand is that this church is not for everyone. My style of leadership is not for everyone. But my style of leadership is for someone. This church is for someone. And so it is my responsibility to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to develop. Amen. And when we talk about leadership, I don't want to come off as if I'm some sort of leadership guru, because I'm not. I'm not a leadership guru. However, when I look back over my life, I can see that I was always in the place or a position of leadership. And it wasn't because I appointed myself. It was just, that's what people saw in me. They saw the leader in me. Even when I was a young man, they saw the leader in me. And so for whatever reason, the children, when you go to the parent-teacher conferences and you join the clubs, they nominate me to be a leader. And even here at Peace Chapel, when I came to Peace Chapel, it wasn't about being a leader. It wasn't about being a pastor. In fact, when I came, I was willing to serve in any capacity that was needed. No title at all. Just wherever. If you need me to clean the floors, I don't care. I don't need a title. I just want to serve in any way where I can help. And so I'm not a leadership guru, but I do have some experience when it comes to leadership. And one of the things that I've discovered, the basics for being a great leader is you must first learn to be a great follower. This is important that we get this. Because, we look at a following as sort of a derogatory word, right? I'm not a follower, I'm a leader. But in order for you to be a leader, a great leader, you need to first be a follower. The nerve of us to expect someone to follow us if we're not willing to follow. Yeah. And so we must learn how to be a leader. Now, I know that everyone that comes to Peace Chapel, or everyone that watches the message, is not Christians. And that's good. That's what we want. I want the church to have people that are not Christians in here listening to these messages, because we do have an agenda. Our agenda is to get you to believe. We can't make you believe, but our agenda is to get you to believe. But, normally I prepare my messages with that in mind, that there are people in the congregation that don't believe, or they're kind of on the fence, or people that are watching on YouTube or Facebook or whatever that are sort of on the fence. But here's what I want to say. To the Christians and the non-Christians, Jesus Christ was the greatest leader to ever live. Amen. Whether you believe the way Christians believe or not, Jesus Christ was the greatest leader to ever live. I want you to think about this for a minute. His brand Christianity was started over 2,000 years ago. They didn't have airplanes. They traveled on donkeys, they traveled by feet, they traveled by boat. They didn't have airplanes. But over 2,000 years later, his brand is still going strong. Wow. That doesn't happen if you're not a great leader. Wow. Now here's the thing. Many people, most people, we've had some great leaders throughout our generations, but he's definitely, in my opinion, the greatest leader to ever live. But people don't normally look at Jesus as a great leader. People look at Jesus as a historical figure or some sort of religious historical figure. And when you think about religious historical figures, you don't think leader. Because leaders are about change. Religion is about staying the same. Leadership is about the future. Religion is about the past. But Jesus Christ was an extraordinary leader in that he ushered in change. Women who are here today, who have the freedom that you have today, would not have the freedom that you have today had it not been for Jesus Christ. He was the one who ushered in that change, because before his ministry, women were considered less than men. And so because of Jesus Christ's ministry, his leadership, he ushered in change. He confronted the status quo. He confronted the religious tradition of his time, and he ushered in change. He was not a religious figure. He was a historical great leader. And so today we're going to look at his secret to great leadership. Jesus had a secret to great leadership. And so I want to share with you guys our mission. Our mission here at Peace Chapel is to develop fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ. And here's how we see that out. The way that we see that is, if you become a good follower of Jesus Christ, that equips you to be a leader in your home. Because many people don't view themselves as leaders, but all of us have the potential to lead. For example, a mother who has children, she's a leader in her home. And she might not be a good leader, but she's a leader in her home. Our mission at Peace Chapel is to help her to become a good leader in her home. To help the father become a good leader in his home. You at your job, you might have the position of just a regular worker. You might not have the status of being a manager, but you can still be a leader at your job. And that's what our mission is, to help you to be a leader at your job, a good leader at your job. If we're to transform this community, if we're to make a difference in this community, we have to be made up of a church that's made up of individual leaders. And so our mission is strategically designed to move you to a position where you can be a great leader. And the way that we do that is we must follow our leader, Jesus Christ. Amen. If Christians everywhere, everyone who named the name of Christ followed their leader, we can make a difference not only in the church, but in the community and in the world. But we must learn how to follow our leader. And so Jesus Christ, he was a great leader, but he was a relational leader. He led people into relationships. For example, he would use terms, and his parables were designed to teach us the importance of relationships. He was the one who introduced the relationship that we have with God as our Heavenly Father. Before Jesus Christ, there was no such thing. People didn't view God as being a father. And so he talked about relationships in terms of a parent and a child. That we have that type of relationship with God. But then he also talked about the relationship between the vine and the branches. that when you're connected to the vine in terms of the relationship, you're going to bear fruit. You're going to produce fruit, but you have to stay in relationship or stay connected to the vine. And then he talked about the relationship of sheep and shepherd. And he helped people to understand that the shepherd had the responsibility of caring for the sheep. He said, my sheep hear my voice. That no matter what's going on around them, they've grown accustomed to hearing my voice. No matter how much noise, no matter how loud the music is, no matter how dark it is, my sheep hear my voice. And so it's all about relationship. And so throughout the Gospels, Jesus constantly used this one word over and over and over again. It is the word follow. He constantly used that word over and over again. And what you'll discover about Jesus, unlike the religious leaders of his day, is Jesus extended an invitation to every type of person imaginable. Every type of person imaginable, he extended the invitation to follow. Whether you were a business person, whether you were a single mom, whether you were black, whether you were Hispanic, whether you were rich, whether you were poor, Jesus extended the same invitation, and that is to follow. And so we're going to look at one of the early uses of this word follow in the book of Matthew. Matthew is the one who is telling the story about himself. And we're going to look at Matthew, picking up at Matthew chapter 9. It says, as Jesus went on from there, and this is talking about him leaving. He had just finished healing some people, and so Jesus is becoming extremely popular. And he has a crowd of people that are following him, but he also has his immediate apostles that are following him as well. And so he finishes healing this person, this lame person. He saw a man named Matthew. That's the one who's telling the story. He's talking about himself in the third person. He says, sitting at the tax collector's booth because he was a tax collector. Really, really quick. I want you to understand what it means to be a tax collector so you can track with me throughout this message. A tax collector was one of the most hated people of the day. Nobody could stand tax collectors. In fact, just so you can understand how ugly and how people looked at tax collectors, it would be like a person today recruiting young people to sell drugs for them. Or even worse than that, a parent using their child to commit a crime. Disgusting. Tax collectors were looked at as disgusting. They were the outcasts. They were not allowed inside of the temple. And here's why. Rome auctioned off the right to collect taxes to its citizens. And what the citizens would do would go to the provinces of Rome, like Judea, and they would charge these extreme amounts for taxes. And Rome didn't care as long as they got their amount. And they would hire out to the locals the responsibility of collecting these taxes. And so to the Jews, a person that became a tax collector was considered to be a traitor. The moment you became a tax collector, you were immediately considered an outcast. You were immediately excluded. And so Jesus goes up to this tax collector who's sitting at the tax collector's booth. And Jesus looks at him, and he could have said anything to him. He could have said, I can't believe you. I know your mother raised you better than that. But Jesus looked at Matthew, the tax collector, and here's what he said. Follow me. Follow me. Look, he didn't say, pray this prayer.
Come on.
Yeah.
He didn't say, I need you to change the way that you dress. He didn't say, I need you to go back and make good on all of the wrong that you did. He looked at him and he said, follow me.
Wow.
And look, here, the Bible teaches us that this is what Matthew did. In the very next verse,
Wow.
the Bible said Matthew got up and followed him. Now, this is very important that we grab this. This is not an invitation to follow me down the street. This is an invitation to be on my team.
Come on now.
Speak. Yeah.
Come on.
This is an invitation to be a part of my immediate circle.
Yeah.
Any basketball fans in here?
Oh, yeah.
You got some basketball fans? They did the All-Star game differently this year. They allowed the two most vote getters to pick their teams. LeBron James and Steph Curry. Since LeBron James got the most votes, he was able to pick first. He picked, with his first selection, Kevin Durant. Why did he pick Kevin Durant? Because Kevin Durant is the best player next to him. In LeBron James' mind, the best player next to me is Kevin Durant, and so he picked the best player. Steph Curry selected James Harden. Because in Steph Curry's mind, James Harden is the next best player since Kevin Durant is off the board. We look at visual things, right? When we're picking our team, we look at visual things. The Pharisees, the religious people of Jesus' day, would have never went up to Matthew, a tax collector, and said, follow me. They just didn't get down like that because Matthew didn't fit the description. He wasn't religious. He didn't know the Bible. He didn't look the part. He was an outcast. But Jesus went up to him and said, follow me.
Wow.
Now this next part is going to blow your mind. Right? Because Jesus tells Matthew to follow him. In the very next scene, look at where Jesus asked Matthew to follow him at. In verse 9, after he got up and followed him, verse 10, it says, while Jesus was having dinner where? At Matthew's house. Jesus said, I want you to follow me, and guess where we're going? To your house. Jesus asked Matthew to follow him, and he followed him to his house. I'm going to challenge you guys like crazy at the end of this message, and I want you to respond appropriately, but it's going to be based on this particular verse right here. And so look at this. They're at Matthew's house. Look, many what? Many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. So it's not just Matthew, it's a whole bunch of tax collectors and a whole bunch of sinners all chilling with Jesus at Matthew's house. Now, I don't want you guys to miss this, all right? I don't want you guys to miss this. Tax collectors were so bad that they had their own category. Tax collectors and sinners. The only people that tax collectors could hang around with was other tax collectors and sinners. And so they were in bondage. And so Jesus goes with Matthew to his house. And all of Matthew's tax collecting friends and sinners were there with them. So I want to pause right here. I want to make a point. Your leader, Jesus Christ, I'm talking to Christians. Your leader, Jesus Christ, was extraordinarily comfortable around people who knew they did not have it all together. I'm telling you, I'm not making this up. It's in the text. Your leader, Jesus Christ, was extraordinarily comfortable around people who knew they did not have it all together. Now watch this. This is what this leads to. This is what this leads to. We're talking about follow your leader. That's the name of today's message. This is what it leads to. This is what it leads to. It leads to people who knew they did not have it all together being extraordinarily comfortable around Jesus.
Come on.
Now, I want to ask you the question. Are sinners comfortable around you? They're probably not if you're not comfortable around them.
Come on, right?
But Jesus is getting ready to make a point because he's being shadowed by his haters.
Come on, right? Come on.
Whenever you decide to do something worthwhile, expect to have some haters.
Okay. Hey.
Trust me when I tell you this.
Preach, Doc.
If you don't want haters, just sit on your hands and do nothing.
Preach.
Nobody will ever hate you. Nobody will ever throw shots at you. But the moment you make up your mind that you're going to do something of significance, expect to have some haters. And so Jesus Christ had haters. They were shadowing him. If Jesus Christ was on social media, if he had a Twitter account, he would follow no one but God. But he'd have millions of followers. And these millions of followers will be made up of people who adore him, but also of people made up of people who secretly hate him. And so he had these haters, and they're shadowing him, right? They're shadowing him. The Bible calls them Pharisees. Verse 11, it says, when the Pharisees saw this, what? Matthew, Jesus eating with the sinners in Matthew's house. It says, when the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? They on the outside looking in. I imagine that Jesus is probably in the living room and they sit down, they have a dinner together, and there's probably people on the porch or whatnot. And so the Pharisees are right there and they're like, why is your teacher, why is he eating with tax collectors and sinners? And Jesus being divine, I'm sure he heard this. Jesus hears everything. We can whisper it and Jesus still hears it. We can say it in our mind and Jesus still hears it, right? And so Jesus heard this. And look at what it says. On hearing this, Jesus said, it is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. He heard what they were saying. He heard it. He said, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. Now imagine if you were Matthew. And Jesus said that in your house. I can see Matthew being extremely offended because, if I'm understanding what you're saying, Jesus, what you're saying is that we're sick. To Jesus' reply, he would say, Matthew, you're a tax collector.
Okay.
Of course you're sick.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Jesus was so comfortable with who he was and the fact that he won them over first, he owned the right to call them tax collectors and sinners or sick people.
Right.
See, what we do, we go at it way too early. We ain't built no relationship with them at all, but we want to call them sick. And you call a person sick and they don't know you like that, you might get them hands. Because who do you think you are calling me sick? But see, the only people who are qualified to benefit from Jesus' leadership are people who know that they are sick. And then he says something else that sort of, I believe, offended the Pharisees. He says in verse 13, but go and learn what this means. And this had to be offensive because the Pharisees were always learning. They thought they knew everything. And Jesus says, go and learn. And he quotes the prophet Hosea. He says, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have not come to call. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners.
Wow.
That's Jesus' mission.
Wow.
His mission was he came to call sinners. If that was Jesus' mission, then that should be our mission as well. Come to call. Jesus came to call sinners. And so I want you to think about this for a minute. Jesus is not here, but he's here. And Jesus is doing work in the church. Jesus is also doing work in the community. Are you inside the house with Jesus doing the work? Or are you outside with the Pharisees complaining?
Wow.
I'm not meddling. I'm just asking a question because look, I want you to win. I really do. I don't want anybody in this church to lose.
Preach, God.
But if we're not careful in all of our learning and all of our knowledge, we can become arrogant. And we can find ourselves on the outside looking in while Jesus works on the very people that we were called to reach. Come to call, come to call, come to call. The Pharisees' invitation was change and you can become one of us. Jesus' invitation was become one of us and you'll change. Radically different. And so I have a question for you. Are you following? Are you following your leader? Not me. I mean, you should follow me because God did appoint me as a leader. But are you following your leader, Jesus Christ?
Yeah.
Your leader, Jesus Christ, was the greatest leader to ever live. He was the greatest leader to ever live. But what was his secret? Let's look at his secret in another passage in Mark chapter 10. Now, Mark wasn't one of the apostles. Mark hung out with the apostles, and I believe that's how he got his information. I think he was really close to Peter. But it says in Mark chapter 10, starting at verse 32, it says, they were on their way up to Jerusalem with Jesus leading the way. And the disciples were astonished. They were astonished because Jesus had taught about rich people and how difficult it is for rich people to make it into the kingdom. It would be more difficult for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. And so they're astonished by his teaching, while those who followed were afraid. The other people were afraid about this teaching. Maybe they had money or whatever, but for whatever reason, they were afraid. Again, he took the 12 aside, and again means that he had already talked to them about this before. Again, he took the 12 aside and told them what was going to happen. And so basically, Jesus is getting ready. He's preparing his disciples for his death. He's saying, things are great right now. We're popular. We're all on the news. People are talking about us. The church is growing. I mean, it's just, we're all that. But things are getting ready to get bad. They're getting ready to go from good to bad. He goes on to say, he says, we're going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. Before, you guys were able to fight him off. But now you're not going to be able to fight him off. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles, that's the Romans, who will mock him and spit on him, flog him and kill him. He's talking about himself in the third person. 3 days later, he will rise from the dead. And so Jesus is having this heart-to-heart. He's having a heart-to-heart conversation with his apostles. It's very intimate, right? It's very, very, very intimate conversation. And he's letting them know things are getting ready to get really, really bad for us, particularly me. I'm getting ready to get beaten. I'm getting ready to get flogged. I'm getting ready to get spit on. And so all of his apostles are around him. And he's trying to prepare them for this thing that was good is getting ready to go bad, right? And so in the very next verse, it says, then James and John, who were a part of that circle, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. Can you imagine that? The nerve of them. Let me help you guys to understand this. That would be like me having a conversation with my children and telling them, I got cancer. And things are getting ready to get bad. Cancer's getting ready to beat my body up. I'm going to go through chemotherapy. My hair is going to fall out. I'm going to lose my strength. I'm going to start losing weight. And when I finished talking, little Twan says, Dad, can I have your car when you die? Think about it. Jesus he just told them. He just told them what's getting ready to happen to him. And they're so self-centered that their response was, can you do me a favor? See, the apostles, they knew that Jesus Christ was very powerful, right? And they expected for Jesus to at some point throw off his rabbinic robe and just conquer Rome. And when Jesus conquered Rome, they want to benefit from it as well. And so Jesus says, what do you want me to do for you, he asked. They replied, they brothers, right? Let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory. I have major problems with this. First of all, they're very insensitive towards what Jesus is getting ready to go through. But second of all, they haven't earned the rights.
Right.
They're not ready yet. They will be ready, but they're not ready yet. One of the first companies I ever started was a company called Connect Worldwide. And with Connect Worldwide, this was like the first time Antoine was able to just kind of blow up with money. I was 18 years old, got me a little office, and went back to the hood to hire people from the neighborhood. Now, mind you, I had been at this thing for a long time, and I had put together what I believe was a blueprint to get payphone contracts, get business owners to sign payphone contracts, and then turn around and sell them to investors who wanted to invest in the payphone. And so I figured I had the blueprint. And so I said, I'm going to duplicate myself. I'm going to go back to the neighborhood, and I'm going to offer it to some of my family members and some of my friends, the same opportunity that I had. I had people day one who wanted to be where I was. Never mind all of the stuff that I went through to get it there. People don't even think like that. Never mind all of the stuff that I went through to get it there. You just want to be right there where I'm at, as if you don't need to work for it too. I done put in work.
Right.
I done been digging. I've been up late at night figuring this thing out. I'm the one that had to fail before I figured it out. You were nowhere around. The nerve of you to think that you should be right where I'm at on your first day of working. Look at them. We want to be right there where you are, right on your right and right on your left. Now remember, there's 12. This is just 2, right? This is just 2. And Mark goes on to tell us, when the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. And they weren't indignant because they felt like it was crazy of them to make a request to Jesus at a moment like that. They were indignant because they wanted to be in the same place that John and James were requesting to be. See, here's the problem for most people when it comes to being good leaders. We're too busy trying to convince other people that we're something that we're not.
There you go.
We're making requests to be in places that we're not ready for. And so what you see is a lot of inflating of the ego. Pumping yourself up. And the moment you stop pumping yourself up, you're going to go right back down. And so your whole time, all the time, you're not really doing anything. Most of the time, you're just pumping yourself up. You see it all the time on Facebook. That's who people want you to believe they are. But they're not really that. I've done this, I did that, I've accomplished this, I've accomplished that. Just pumping yourself up. And so you have a big ego. And so you have a church full of people with big heads, but little bitty hands.
There you go.
Big heads, but little bitty hands. Let's look at the next one. It's big. It's big for a reason. Look at me over here. Check me out. The man. I done did it all. And so it's the ego. Our ego gets us in trouble all the time. Our ego gets in the way of us being effective leaders. Ego stands for edging God out. I didn't know that either. I just found that. I told you I just get on Google. We will help you out. I did not know that. I didn't make that up. All right? And so Jesus, in verse 41, Jesus called them together and said, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their officials exercise authority over them. And so Jesus uses two Greek words that mean the same thing. Really what he's saying is the Gentiles in society, people abuse authority. He said, you know how it is. You know, the leader is the one that gets to tell people what to do. And the apostles are like, yeah, we know. That's exactly what we want to do.
Wow.
We want to tell people what to do. Jesus said, that's how the Gentiles do things, right? And so what Jesus is pointing out to them is, this is a typical leadership structure. This is a typical structure. That's you at the top. And then right under you are the three people who report to you. And then they have the people that report to them and the people that report to them. He's saying this is typical in the world. This is typical in society. This is how society gets down. But then he goes on to say in verse 43, not so with you. And I want you guys to say that. Not so with me.
Not so with me.
Jesus says, not so with you. Instead, he's getting ready to completely deflate their ego. Look at what he says. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. What? What? Jesus, that makes no sense. What do you mean? That's not what I want. I want people to serve me. Check me out. Big me. I get to call the shots. I want to be the one that tells people what to do. He says, whoever wants to be great among you, and he's talking about have authority, he says, must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first, look at this, must be slave of all. He said, wow. Hold up. That's not what I signed up for.
Great.
Jesus completely turned this thing upside down. He changed the game. This is a game changer. Religious figures don't do this. Only leaders usher in this type of change. This was not understood. You don't know this intuitively. This is not anything that comes intuitively. And so Jesus, he turns this thing upside down. And so let's look at Jesus' leadership structure. You want to be great? That's fine. I'm not going to stop you from being great. I want you to be great too. But I want you to understand what greatness is in the kingdom of God. You got to be a servant.
Yeah.
The people are not there to serve you, leaders. You're there to serve the people. And so, you think about this with your rational mind, you're like, wait a minute, this just doesn't make sense. How are we ever going to get anything done? Look, let me tell you, Jesus is not making an argument for passive leadership. That's not what he's saying. He's not saying you need to, you go first, you go first, you go first. You never get anything done. He's not making an argument for passive leadership. And he's not making an argument against point leadership because he was the point leader and he also appointed other people to lead. But what he's saying is, if you want to be great, if you want the authority that you say you want, here's how you do it. And so what Jesus, your leader, did was he used his authority to benefit those who were under his authority. Did you guys get that?
Wow.
Your leader, Jesus Christ, used his authority to benefit those who were under his authority.
Wow.
And so if you want to be a great leader, I want you to put this in any category you want to put it in. As a mother, as a father, as a grandmother, as a grandfather, as an auntie, as an uncle, on the job, in the community, because remember, we're taking this thing outside of the church. If you want to be a great leader, then you need to learn to leverage your authority for the benefit of those who are under your authority. They are not there to serve you. You are there to serve them.
Wow.
I knew I wasn't going to get a lot of amens and claps on that. Because people want to be great. They want to be the man. They want to be the shot caller. They want to be the big baller. They want people to be there for them. But I want you to think about this. Who are you that people should be there for you? Are you as great as Jesus was? So we need to learn how to leverage our authority for the benefit of those who are under our authority. Every so often, you have these leadership gurus, and I'm not a leadership guru. There are leadership gurus that I study, and they talk about, the habits. Covey talks about the 7 habits, and the 12 habits, the 9 habits, and all of that. The things that make a great leader. What are the things that distinguish a great leader? And so I'm reading this book right here by Jim Collins, and it's called Good to Great. Really, really good book. I'm telling you, it talks about how to be a great leader in the marketplace, how to be a great nonprofit leader. And what he discovered, he started to search out what, he looked at all of these different companies. I sent this quote in the leadership group chat the other day where it talked about Walgreens. Now, for a long time, Walgreens was just a company that was kind of barely getting by. And then all of a sudden, they just took off in 1975 and they started beating out companies like Intel and Coca-Cola. Just blew up like crazy. And they wanted to find out why. What was it that caused these companies that were just kind of getting by from time to time, barely making it by? What was it that caused them to all of a sudden become great companies? And what he discovered, and he admitted this, he thought that with his research, what he would find is that at the leadership helm, the person that was leading, you will find a very charismatic leader, right? We're not nowhere near on the same slides. I don't know where you guys are, but that's not where we're supposed to be. Is it froze? Okay, am I following? Keep going. All right, so he thought it would be charisma. That, you would find somebody at the helm that's a very charismatic leader. But here's what he discovered. It was humility. It was humility. At the helm, at the leadership helm of all of these companies that were kind of getting by and then all of a sudden they became great, you would find a humble leader. Now here's the thing. He wasn't saying this is what great leaders do. If you want to be a great leader, this is what you need to do. What he was saying was, this is what we discovered that great leaders do. Humility. And so in his book, Good to Great, he talks about the level 5 leader. The level 5 leader is the one who actually turned things around. He says this in his book. He says, level 5 leaders embody a paradoxical mix of personal humility and professional will. They have a drive to get things done, but underneath all of that, just kind of driving that, you'll find humility. They're ambitious to be sure, but ambitious first and foremost for the company, not themselves. These are level 5 leaders. And so the most powerful question we can ask ourselves to drive this through our culture here at Peace Chapel. The most powerful question we can ask ourselves to drive this through our culture at home, to drive this through our culture at work, in the marketplace, is this. What can I do to help? That's a very, very powerful question. That is a very, very powerful question. Look, if you're here at Peace Chapel right now and you don't have a title, and you start asking that question, guess who the real leaders are?
Right.
Not the one with the title. Guess who's really ready to make a difference? Not the one with the title, but it's the one that's willing to say, what can I do to help? But see, getting here, you got 2, 3 claps, some people get it, some people don't want to get it. But getting here is not easy. Because in order to get here, you must first confront your ego. Remember, ego is edging God out. You can actually be a leader without a title. We're going to talk about that on the 18th. That's going to blow your mind. You can be a leader that can slay giants and don't even have a title. You got to confront your ego. Jesus said, not so with you. Not so with you. You're not the one that's lording your authority over people so that they can be there for you. Not so with you. He says, instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. Servant leadership is the best. That was the secret to Jesus' leadership. You got to be a servant. And whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. And then he finishes it up with saying this. Mark chapter 10, verse 45. For the Son of Man, he's talking about himself. For the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Are you better than Jesus? Are you better than Jesus? He says, I didn't come to be served. I'm God in a body.
Wow.
And I didn't come to be served. I came to serve. And give my life, give my life, give my life. Come to call, come to call, come to call. Give my life as a ransom for many. You can make a difference. You can be an off-the-chain leader before you get the title. Off-the-chain leader who makes a difference in the church. Can you imagine if we had a culture like that? Where instead of everybody looking for people to serve them, they're going around asking people, what can I do to help? What can I do to help? And here's the thing. As you're doing that, you need to understand this. You can't help everybody.
That part.
Sir.
But just because you can't help everybody does not mean that you should help nobody.
All right.
And so here's the thing. What you wish that you can do for everyone, do for someone. Find someone at work, find someone at school, find someone at home, find someone in the church, and just ask them the question, what can I do to help? You will make a difference. And so in conclusion, follow your leader, Jesus Christ. And then ask yourself this question. What would this look like in your world? What would this look like for you as a mother? What would this look like for you as a father? What would this look like for you on the job? When you go back and be around your homies, right? We get saved and we get so cleaned up. We smell so good. Then we start excluding ourselves from the very people we're called to reach.
Come on, say that.
Here's a caveat. Don't miss this. Jesus led Matthew to his house. But he was the leader.
Wow.
So I'm not telling you to go hang around sinners and let them be the leader.
Come on.
Because then you're going to end up coming like them. They're going to become like them. They're going to rub off on you.
Go.
You go back to their house. This is the challenge. Here's the challenge. Here's the challenge.